Some losses hurt so deeply that letting go of a single object feels harder than losing an entire future. Avery Collins never imagined her life would collapse so quickly. Just 1 year earlier, everything had seemed perfect. She had a beautiful apartment in downtown Chicago, a stable career in event management, and a fiancé she believed would become her husband. Friends often describe her as lucky. From the outside, her future appeared carefully planned and completely secure. But life had a way of destroying certainty without warning. The engagement ended 3 months before the wedding. No dramatic betrayal had occurred. No public scandal had exploded across social media. The ending was much quieter and somehow far more painful. One day, her fiancé, Ethan Caldwell, simply admitted that he no longer felt the same way. Years of promises disappeared during a single conversation. The wedding was canceled. The apartment lease became impossible to afford alone. Shared savings vanished beneath cancellation fees and unpaid deposits. Within weeks, Avery found herself moving into a small apartment on the outskirts of the city, carrying boxes filled with pieces of a future that no longer existed. At first, she believed she would recover quickly. She threw herself into work. She accepted every project available. She worked late nights. She forced smiles during meetings. She convinced everyone around her that she was fine. The truth was very different. The breakup had left emotional scars deeper than she admitted. The financial damage proved equally devastating. The company she worked for experienced budget cuts shortly after the canceled wedding. Several employees lost their jobs. Avery was among them. Everything she had carefully built began falling apart. Month after month, savings disappeared. Rent consumed most of her remaining money. Credit card balances grew larger. Collection notices started arriving in the mailbox. The pressure became impossible to ignore. Each morning, she opened her eyes with anxiety already waiting for her. Each night, she fell asleep wondering how she would survive another month. Yet throughout all the struggles, one object remained untouched: the engagement ring. The diamond rested inside a small velvet box hidden in the back of her dresser. She rarely looked at it, but she could never bring herself to throw it away. The ring represented more than a failed relationship. It represented the version of herself she had once been. The hopeful woman who believed love guaranteed stability. The woman who trusted promises. The woman who thought forever actually meant forever. Selling it felt like burying that person permanently. For months, Avery refused to consider it. No matter how desperate things became, the ring remained untouched. Then reality arrived. A final notice appeared on her kitchen counter. Past due bills covered nearly every surface in the apartment. The landlord had already issued warnings. Her car payment was late. Her bank account contained less than $300. For the first time, Avery realized sentiment could not pay rent. The decision haunted her for days. She carried the velvet box around her apartment. Sometimes she opened it. Sometimes she stared at the diamond for long periods without moving. The stone still sparkled exactly as it had the day Ethan proposed. Beautiful, expensive, meaningless. Eventually practicality won. One cold Thursday morning, Avery placed a ring inside her purse and left the apartment. Rain covered the city. Gray clouds stretched endlessly above Chicago's skyline. The weather matched her mood perfectly. She walked several blocks before reaching a well-known jewelry and pawn establishment located near the financial district. The store had existed for decades. People sold valuables there every day: watches, necklaces, inherited jewelry, wedding rings, dreams. Avery hesitated outside the entrance. Her reflection stared back through the glass. She looked exhausted. Dark circles surrounded her eyes. Stress had stolen much of the confidence she once carried naturally. For a moment, she considered turning around, keeping the ring, finding another solution. But deep down, she already knew there wasn't one. Slowly, she stepped inside. The shop felt quiet. Bright lights reflected off glass display cases. Expensive jewelry sparkled beneath carefully positioned spotlights. A clerk greeted her politely before asking how he could help. Avery removed the velvet box from her purse. The action felt strangely final, almost like signing divorce papers. The clerk opened the box. His professional smile faded slightly. The diamond was impressive, clearly expensive, clearly valuable. He began examining it carefully. While the evaluation continued, Avery looked around the store to avoid watching. That was when she noticed him, a man standing near the back of the showroom. Tall, imposing, dressed in a dark tailored coat. His presence immediately drew attention despite his silence. Several employees glanced toward him with visible respect. Others appeared nervous. The man wasn't speaking. He simply observed. His sharp gray eyes eventually settled on Avery. Something about his gaze felt different, not inappropriate, not threatening, focused, calculating, as though he recognized something she didn't. Avery quickly looked away. She had no interest in attracting attention, especially not from strangers. What she didn't know was that the stranger was Roman DeLuca, one of the most powerful and feared men in Chicago. Officially, Roman owned several successful businesses, luxury hotels, construction companies, real estate investments. Unofficially, his influence extended much deeper. Powerful politicians knew his name. Business leaders respected him. Criminal organizations avoided crossing him. Roman DeLuca rarely entered pawn shops. Yet today, he happened to be there reviewing a separate business matter. Then he noticed Avery. More specifically, he noticed a ring. The moment the clerk opened the velvet box, Roman's attention sharpened. Recognition hit him instantly, because he knew that ring. Not the exact diamond, not the setting itself, but the design, the engraving hidden inside, the family crest embedded beneath the band. Only a handful of people in the world would recognize it. Roman was one of them. The ring should never have been in Avery Collins's possession. Its origin connected to events buried decades in the past. Events involving powerful families, dangerous secrets, and a mystery Roman had been trying to solve for years. He watched quietly as the clerk continued his examination. Questions filled Roman's mind. Who was this woman? How did she obtain the ring? Why was she selling it? Most importantly, did she know what she actually possessed? The answer became obvious almost immediately. Avery looked heartbroken, not deceptive, not manipulative, not aware of the significance attached to the jewelry. To her, it was simply an engagement ring from a failed relationship. To Roman, it was a clue, perhaps the most important clue he had encountered in years. Several minutes later, the clerk provided a preliminary estimate. Avery listened carefully. The number was lower than she hoped, yet high enough to solve several immediate problems: rent, utilities, car payments, temporary survival. She closed her eyes briefly before nodding. The decision hurt, but necessity left little room for emotion. Across the room, Roman made his own decision. The ring could not leave his control. Not now. Not after everything he had discovered. Without attracting attention, he spoke quietly to the store owner. A brief conversation followed. Money changed hands. Instructions were given. Within minutes, the arrangement was complete. Avery remained completely unaware. She finalized the transaction and left the store believing she had sold the last remaining piece of her former life. The rain continued falling as she disappeared into crowded streets. Roman watched through the front window. His expression remained unreadable. The owner approached, carrying the velvet box. Inside rested the ring. Roman opened it slowly. His eyes moved toward the hidden engraving inside the band. The same symbol he had spent years searching for. The same symbol connected to secrets powerful people would kill to protect. For the first time in a very long time, Roman felt genuinely interested in something. And that something was not the ring itself. It was the woman who had unknowingly carried it. As Roman examined the ring more closely, he discovered a hidden marking that proved Avery Collins was connected to a dangerous secret she knew absolutely nothing about. The morning after selling the engagement ring felt strangely empty for Avery Collins. She had spent months convincing herself that letting go of the ring would bring relief. Yet the absence of it left a quiet ache she had not expected. The small velvet box had occupied a corner of her apartment for nearly 2 years. During that time, it had become more than jewelry. It represented promises, dreams, and a version of her future that no longer existed. Now it was gone. Avery tried focusing on practical concerns instead. Rent was due in less than 2 weeks. Credit card balances continued growing. Medical bills from her mother's treatment remained unpaid. Every day felt like a battle against numbers she could never fully defeat. The money from the sale helped temporarily, but it was not enough to solve her problems. Meanwhile, across the city, Roman DeLuca sat inside his private office overlooking Manhattan. The engagement ring rested on the desk in front of him. Roman had spent most of the previous night studying it. The diamond itself was valuable, but that was not what interested him. His attention remained fixed on a small engraving hidden inside the band. Most people would never notice it, but Roman recognized the symbol immediately. Years ago, that mark belonged to a luxury jeweler who created custom pieces exclusively for several powerful families connected to underground business networks. The jeweler had disappeared under mysterious circumstances, so had many of his records. Yet somehow this ring had resurfaced in the hands of a woman named Avery Collins. Roman leaned back in his chair. Nothing about the situation felt random. His instincts had kept him alive for years, and those instincts told him there was a story hidden beneath the surface. He instructed a security team to gather information. Within hours, detailed reports began arriving. Avery Collins, age 28, freelance graphic designer, no criminal history, no suspicious financial activity, no known connections to organized crime. At first glance, she appeared completely ordinary, but the deeper investigators looked, the stranger things became. Her former fiancé, Ethan Mercer, had disappeared from public view shortly after ending their engagement. His social media accounts vanished. Business records changed ownership. Several companies connected to him had been quietly dissolved. Large financial transfers occurred in the months leading up to the breakup. None of it made sense. Roman reviewed every document carefully. A pattern slowly emerged. Someone had been moving money through multiple shell corporations. Someone had been hiding assets. And Ethan Mercer appeared connected to all of it. Roman requested additional records. The results raised even more questions. Certain transactions linked back to organizations Roman recognized immediately. Organizations that operated far beyond legal business practices. Organizations capable of making people disappear. For the first time, Roman wondered whether Avery had any idea what kind of man she had almost married. Evidence suggested she did not. Every report painted the same picture. A hard-working woman struggling to rebuild her life. Someone focused on surviving rather than uncovering secrets. Someone completely unaware that powerful individuals had started paying attention to her. Over the following week, Roman continued monitoring the situation from a distance. Not because he wanted to control Avery, because too many unanswered questions remained. One afternoon, surveillance footage showed Avery leaving a grocery store carrying several bags. A black SUV remained parked across the street for nearly 40 minutes. The vehicle appeared again 2 days later near her apartment building. Then it appeared outside a coffee shop she frequently visited. Roman noticed the pattern immediately. The SUV was not connected to his organization, which meant someone else was watching her. That discovery transformed simple curiosity into concern. He ordered discreet protection. Avery never noticed. Additional security remained invisible, blending naturally into the city around her. To Avery, life continued normally. She worked long hours. She searched for new clients. She tried rebuilding confidence damaged by betrayal. Occasionally, she thought about the engagement ring. Mostly, she wondered who purchased it so quickly. The pawn shop owner had mentioned receiving an unusually generous offer. That detail remained stuck in her mind. Part of her wanted to know where the ring ended up. Another part believed the past should remain buried. Unfortunately, the past had no intention of staying buried. Several days later, Roman received a call from one of his financial analysts. The analyst sounded unusually serious. New information had surfaced regarding Ethan Mercer. Records showed Ethan receiving substantial payments from accounts tied to international investment groups. On paper, the transactions appeared legitimate. In reality, they were anything but normal. The amounts were too large. The timing was too convenient. The explanations were too vague. Roman spent hours reviewing documents. Every piece of information pushed him toward the same conclusion. Ethan had been involved in something dangerous, something important enough to generate millions of dollars. Yet shortly after ending his engagement to Avery, he had vanished completely. Roman found that detail impossible to ignore. People did not simply disappear after receiving enormous amounts of money, not unless they were running from someone or hiding something. The investigation expanded. More names surfaced. More companies appeared. More connections emerged. Eventually, one particular name caught Roman's attention. The name belonged to a deceased businessman who had been linked to a criminal financial network years earlier. That businessman also happened to have a surprising connection to Avery's family history. Roman stared at the file for a long time. The connection was distant but undeniable. For decades, certain events had remained hidden beneath layers of secrecy. Now fragments of those events were resurfacing, and somehow Avery stood near the center of everything, without realizing it. As days passed, signs of danger increased. Avery noticed strange occurrences, but dismissed them as coincidences. A car parked outside her apartment too often. An unfamiliar man appeared repeatedly in different locations. Several emails disappeared from her inbox. One evening, her apartment door was slightly open when she returned home. Nothing appeared stolen. Nothing appeared damaged. Yet she felt unsettled. The feeling lingered for hours. Across town, Roman received confirmation that unknown individuals had accessed information connected to Avery. Someone else was investigating her. Someone with significant resources. The realization concerned him more than he wanted to admit. His original interest in the engagement ring had evolved into something much larger. Every answer uncovered two additional questions. Every mystery revealed another hidden layer. Roman rarely allowed emotions to influence decisions, but this situation felt different. Avery had unknowingly become part of a conflict she did not understand. A conflict that might have begun years before she ever met Ethan Mercer. Late one evening, Roman sat alone in his office, reviewing the newest reports. Rain tapped softly against the windows. The city glowed beneath dark clouds. A thick file rested open before him. Inside were financial records, surveillance photographs, corporate documents, and family histories. Hours passed as he studied every detail. Then he noticed something. A single transaction hidden among hundreds of others. At first glance, it seemed insignificant, but the date immediately caught his attention. The transaction occurred weeks before Avery received the engagement ring. Roman traced the source, then traced it again. The result remained the same. His expression hardened. For the first time, everything began fitting together. The engagement ring was never intended to symbolize love. It had never been about marriage. It had never been meant for Avery at all. Somewhere along the way, the ring had ended up in the wrong hands, and that mistake had set an entire chain of events into motion. Roman closed the file slowly. The truth was finally beginning to emerge, and it was far more dangerous than anyone realized. The days following the sale of the engagement ring unfolded in ways Avery Collins could never have imagined. She believed she had finally closed the most painful chapter of her life. Selling the ring had felt like cutting away the final piece of a broken future. The diamond that once symbolized promises, stability, and love was now gone. At least that was what she believed. What Avery did not know was that the ring had already become the center of a dangerous secret that stretched back decades. Across the city, Roman DeLuca sat inside a private office hidden within one of his legitimate business headquarters. The engagement ring rested inside a velvet-lined case on his desk. For days, Roman had been examining every detail of it. At first glance, the ring appeared completely ordinary. White gold, elegant craftsmanship, a flawless diamond mounted in a timeless design. Nothing unusual, nothing suspicious. Yet Roman trusted his instincts more than anything else. The moment he had seen the ring inside the pawn shop, something about it had felt familiar. That feeling refused to disappear. Now he intended to discover why. Under bright examination lights, Roman carefully rotated the ring. His security specialist stood nearby, while a professional jeweler inspected every millimeter. Hours passed without results. Nothing appeared out of place. No hidden markings. No unusual engravings. No signs of tampering. The jeweler eventually suggested that Roman's suspicions might be wrong. Roman disagreed. Years of surviving in the criminal underworld had taught him that instincts rarely lied, especially when they arrived as strongly. The breakthrough happened late that evening. One of Roman's technology experts noticed an almost invisible seam beneath the diamond's setting. The seam was so precise that it could not be detected by the naked eye. Specialized tools were required. Carefully, the expert applied pressure. A tiny section beneath the stone shifted. The room immediately fell silent. Roman leaned forward. Hidden inside the ring was a micro-storage device no larger than a grain of rice. For several seconds, nobody spoke. The discovery changed everything. The engagement ring was never just jewelry. It was a hiding place, a container, a vault. Roman's expression darkened. Someone had hidden something extremely valuable inside that diamond years ago. The question was simple. What exactly was stored there? The device was transferred into secure equipment. Minutes later, encrypted files appeared on a monitor. Roman expected financial records, perhaps offshore accounts, maybe evidence connected to old criminal operations. What appeared was far more significant. Thousands of pages of hidden transactions, property ownership records, international account information, asset locations, investment portfolios, secret identities. The files described a fortune worth hundreds of millions of dollars, a fortune that officially did not exist. The money belonged to a criminal empire that had disappeared nearly 20 years earlier. Roman immediately recognized the names. Many older figures in organized crime had spent decades searching for this missing wealth. Entire alliances had collapsed because of rumors surrounding it. People had been killed over far less. According to underworld legends, the fortune vanished after a betrayal inside one of the most powerful crime organizations in the country. Nobody knew where the money went. Nobody knew who took it. Nobody knew whether it still existed. Now Roman was staring directly at the answer. The ring contained everything. Every account, every location, every key needed to access the fortune. For the first time in years, Roman felt genuinely unsettled. The ring alone could start a war. And somehow that ring had ended up with Avery Collins. His thoughts immediately shifted toward her. The danger surrounding her had increased dramatically. Before discovering the hidden files, Roman had simply been curious. Now concern replaced curiosity. Anyone connected to the ring could become a target. Anyone, especially Avery. Roman ordered an immediate investigation into the ring's complete history. Teams worked around the clock. Within 48 hours, fragments of the truth began emerging. Years earlier, the ring had belonged to a wealthy businessman who disappeared under mysterious circumstances. After his disappearance, ownership became difficult to trace. The ring passed through several hands. Records vanished. Names changed. Documents disappeared. Eventually, the trail connected to Avery's former fiancée. That discovery created even more questions. How had her ex-fiancé acquired something so valuable? Did he know what it contained? Or had he unknowingly inherited it from someone else? The investigation produced no clear answers. Meanwhile, another problem was developing. Roman wasn't the only person looking for the missing fortune. News traveled quickly through hidden networks. Someone had discovered activity connected to the encrypted accounts. Someone knew the fortune might finally have resurfaced. Old enemies began moving. Former associates started making calls. Private investigators appeared. Encrypted messages circulated across criminal circles. The search had resumed. And for the first time in decades, people believed they were close. Avery remained completely unaware. She continued living her normal life. She worked long hours. She struggled with overdue bills. She tried rebuilding her future after heartbreak. She never imagined multiple criminal organizations were suddenly interested in something connected to her. Roman increased surveillance around her immediately. His men watched from a distance, not to control her, not to interfere, simply to ensure she remained safe. At first, nothing unusual happened. Then small incidents began appearing. A black SUV parked across from her apartment several nights in a row. An unfamiliar man photographed her workplace. A stranger asked questions about her former fiancé. None of those incidents seemed dangerous individually. Together, however, they formed a pattern. Someone was looking for information. Someone was getting closer. Roman monitored everything carefully. Each new report increased his concern. Avery had become the weakest link connecting multiple secrets. And weak links rarely survive when powerful people became desperate. One evening, Avery left work later than usual. Heavy rain covered the city. Traffic moved slowly. Streetlights reflected off wet pavement. She walked toward her car, carrying a small umbrella. The parking garage was nearly empty. Her footsteps echoed through the concrete structure. Nothing appeared unusual. Nothing felt threatening. Yet several floors above, hidden cameras tracked her movement. Unknown observers watched. Waiting. Roman security team noticed suspicious activity moments earlier. A vehicle entered the garage without registration records. Two men exited. Their movements immediately triggered alarms. Roman received the report while attending a business meeting. Without hesitation, he left. His instincts told him the situation was escalating. Back inside the garage, Avery reached her vehicle. She unlocked the door, prepared to leave. Then something happened. A loud crash echoed from above. Metal beams groaned. A heavy maintenance platform suddenly broke loose. The massive structure plunged downward directly toward the area where Avery stood. Everything happened in seconds. Avery looked up. Her eyes widened. She froze. The falling platform accelerated toward her position. At the last possible moment, a dark vehicle slammed into her parked car. The impact pushed the vehicle sideways. Avery stumbled backward. The maintenance platform crashed into the ground where she had been standing. Concrete exploded. Metal twisted. The sound echoed throughout the garage. For several moments, Avery couldn't process what had happened. Dust filled the air. Her heart pounded violently. The entire incident appeared accidental. A tragic mechanical failure. Bad luck. Nothing more. At least that was what she believed. But several blocks away, Roman reviewed security footage from the garage. His expression hardened. The platform had not failed naturally. The support bolts had been deliberately cut. Someone had planned it. Someone wanted Avery dead. And that realization confirmed the fear growing inside him since discovering the secret hidden inside the diamond. Avery Collins was no longer connected to the mystery by coincidence. She had become part of it, whether she knew it or not, whether she wanted it or not. Her life had entered a dangerous world from which very few people escaped unchanged. Avery left the garage shaken but alive, believing she had narrowly survived an unfortunate accident. Roman knew the truth. It was not an accident at all. It was the first move in a deadly game that had only just begun. The days following the parking garage incident left Avery Collins deeply unsettled. The police investigation concluded exactly as she expected. Officials labeled the event an unfortunate accident caused by structural failure. Reports were filed. Insurance representatives appeared. The damaged section of the garage was temporarily closed. To everyone else, the case seemed finished. To Avery, however, something felt wrong. The explanation made sense on paper, yet her instincts refused to accept it completely. Every time she replayed the moment in her mind, she felt a strange sense that something larger had happened around her, something she couldn't fully understand. Life moved forward, but unusual events continued appearing around her. Small things, subtle things, the kind of incidents most people would never notice. One afternoon, Avery left work later than normal and headed toward a subway station. As she approached a crowded intersection, a speeding delivery truck suddenly ran a red light. Several pedestrians jumped back in panic. Before Avery could step off the curb, a stranger unexpectedly bumped into her shoulder. The impact pushed her backward. The truck raced through the intersection seconds later. Avery turned around, intending to complain, but the stranger was already gone. The incident lingered in her thoughts. A few days later, another strange event occurred. While shopping for groceries, Avery noticed a man following her through multiple aisles. At first, she dismissed it. Then she noticed him again near the checkout area. Then again outside the store. Fear began creeping into her chest. Before she could react, two store employees suddenly approached the man and escorted him away after some kind of argument. The situation ended so quickly that Avery barely understood what happened. Again, she convinced herself it was coincidence. Yet the pattern continued. An unfamiliar car seemed to appear near her apartment several times. Strangers occasionally watched her longer than normal. Uncomfortable situations emerged and then mysteriously disappeared before becoming serious. Every problem seemed to solve itself. Every threat vanished before reaching her. The coincidences became impossible to ignore. Unknown to Avery, Roman DeLuca's security network had expanded dramatically after discovering the true value of the ring and confirming that powerful criminal organizations were searching for it. Roman refused to leave anything to chance. He assigned trusted men to monitor every location connected to Avery, her apartment, her workplace, her daily routines, her travel routes, everything. His people operated carefully. They never approached her directly. They never revealed themselves. Their purpose was simple: keep her alive. No matter what, Roman reviewed security reports every morning and every night. What began as professional responsibility slowly became something more personal. He found himself paying attention to details that had nothing to do with security. He noticed how hard she worked despite financial struggles. He noticed how often she helped strangers. He noticed how she smiled politely even on difficult days. The more information he received, the harder it became to view her as merely part of a dangerous investigation. Avery became a real person in his mind, someone deserving protection, someone caught in circumstances she never created. That realization complicated everything. Roman DeLuca was not a man accustomed to emotional attachments. His world punished weakness. Caring too much often resulted in loss. For years, he had maintained strict control over every aspect of his life. Now, that control was beginning to slip. His advisors noticed the change. His security chief certainly noticed it. During one evening briefing, concerns were raised. Several rival groups were increasing activity throughout the city. More questions were being asked about Avery. More resources were being spent tracking her movements. The danger level continued rising. One advisor suggested relocating her. Another suggested revealing part of the truth. Roman rejected every proposal. The fewer people who knew about the ring, the better, including Avery, at least for now. Meanwhile, Avery's suspicions continued growing. She began documenting strange events, writing notes, tracking unusual encounters, searching for patterns. The more she analyzed the situations, the more impossible they seemed. Accidents prevented, strangers disappearing, problems resolving themselves. It almost felt as if someone was watching over her. The idea sounded ridiculous, yet no better explanation existed. One evening, she sat alone in her apartment, reviewing everything she had recorded. The list was becoming impossible to ignore. A strange realization formed. Protection, not surveillance. Protection. Someone wasn't merely watching her. Someone was actively intervening. The thought sent chills down her spine. Why would anyone do that? Who would spend such effort protecting an ordinary woman? The answer remained hidden for several more weeks. Then everything changed. Avery attended a charity fundraiser hosted at a luxury hotel downtown. The event connected local businesses, artists, and investors. Her gallery encouraged attendance. Networking opportunities could potentially help her career. She almost declined. Financial stress and recent anxiety made social events exhausting. Eventually, she forced herself to go. The ballroom overflowed with influential guests, business executives, politicians, investors, media representatives. Avery felt completely out of place. She spent most of the evening avoiding attention. Then she noticed something unexpected. Several people throughout the room seemed unusually interested in one particular man. Conversations stopped when he passed. Security personnel subtly adjusted positions around him. Power followed him wherever he moved. Avery recognized him immediately. Roman DeLuca, the same man whose name appeared repeatedly during recent online searches connected to powerful business networks. His reputation extended far beyond legitimate enterprises. Rumors surrounded him constantly. Most people feared him. Others admired him. Few truly understood him. Avery watched from a distance. For reasons she couldn't explain, something about him felt familiar. Then she remembered the pawn shop owner. During her final visit to collect paperwork related to the ring sale, the owner had accidentally mentioned a private buyer, a wealthy man who purchased the ring immediately. The name had been Roman DeLuca. Her heartbeat accelerated. The connection felt significant, almost too significant, as if invisible threads were slowly pulling together. Across the ballroom, Roman noticed her. For a brief moment their eyes met. Neither looked away immediately. A strange silence seemed to form despite the crowded room surrounding them. Roman remained calm externally. Internally, however, tension surged. He never intended for Avery to learn his identity this soon, especially not while multiple enemies remained active. Yet fate had placed them in the same room. The encounter felt inevitable. Avery left the fundraiser early. Questions flooded her thoughts during the drive home. Why had Roman purchased her engagement ring? Why did his name keep appearing around unexplained events? Why did she feel as though he knew something important about her? The answers remained frustratingly out of reach. The following morning, another discovery pushed her suspicions even further. While organizing paperwork at home, Avery found photographs she had never seen before. The envelope contained images of her apartment building, her workplace, several locations she frequently visited. The photographs clearly came from surveillance. Fear immediately took hold. Someone had been watching her, carefully, consistently, for a long time. Among the documents was a name she now recognized, Roman DeLuca. Everything suddenly connected. The protection, the strange interventions, the mysterious buyer, the surveillance, the impossible coincidences. Roman stood at the center of all of it. Fear battled curiosity inside her. Part of her wanted to run. Another part desperately wanted answers. Because one question now outweighed every other concern. Why? Why would one of the most powerful men in the city devote so much attention to her life? That evening, Avery made a decision. She would confront Roman directly. No more guessing. No more assumptions. No more unanswered questions. What she didn't know was that Roman had already been protecting her for far longer than she could possibly imagine. And the truth behind that protection would change everything she believed about the danger surrounding her. As the weeks passed after Avery discovered Roman DeLuca's identity, the distance between them slowly began to shrink. The confrontation she had planned did not go the way she expected. Instead of finding a cold and manipulative criminal mastermind, Avery found a man carrying burdens she could barely comprehend. Roman did not deny watching over her. He did not deny placing protection around her. Most importantly, he did not deny that danger existed. For the first time since selling the engagement ring, Avery finally started receiving answers. Not all of them, but enough to understand that the threats surrounding her were real. That realization changed everything. Although Avery remained cautious, trust slowly started forming. Roman never pressured her. He never demanded loyalty. He never asked for gratitude. Instead, he simply continued protecting her while allowing her space to make her own decisions. That patience surprised her. Every warning she had ever heard about men like Roman painted a completely different picture. Yet reality refused to match those stories. Days turned into weeks. Meetings became conversations. Conversations became genuine understanding. For the first time in years, Avery felt someone was standing beside her rather than trying to control her. Roman found himself looking forward to every interaction. He admired her resilience. He admired the way she refused to let hardship define her. Most of all, he admired her courage. Many people would have run away after learning even a fraction of what she had discovered. Avery stayed, not because she trusted him completely, but because she wanted the truth. That determination impressed Roman more than he admitted. Unfortunately, their growing connection did not go unnoticed. Powerful enemies had already begun watching. The criminal organizations searching for the fortune hidden inside the ring were becoming increasingly desperate. Every move Roman made attracted attention. Every decision was analyzed. Every weakness was studied. And Avery had become the most obvious weakness in his life. The attacks began subtly. First came rumors. Anonymous posts appeared online questioning Avery's character. False stories claimed she was using Roman for money. Others suggested she had manipulated him into helping her. Most people ignored the accusations initially. Internet gossip appeared every day. Few considered it important. Then the campaign intensified. Professional-looking articles suddenly appeared across multiple websites. The accusations became more detailed, more convincing, more damaging. Photographs were edited. Conversations were fabricated. Evidence was manufactured. Someone was investing significant resources into destroying Avery's reputation. At first, she tried ignoring it. She told herself the situation would pass. She focused on work, focused on rebuilding her future, focused on staying strong. But the attacks continued growing. Social media exploded with speculation. Strangers criticized her daily. Comment sections filled with hatred. People who knew nothing about her suddenly believed they knew everything. The emotional toll became impossible to ignore. One morning, Avery arrived at work and immediately noticed unusual behavior. Co-workers avoided eye contact. Conversations stopped when she entered rooms. Several clients canceled upcoming meetings without explanation. The atmosphere felt completely different. By afternoon, she understood why. One of the online stories had gone viral. Thousands of people had seen it. Many believed it. The article portrayed Avery as a manipulative opportunist who targeted wealthy men for personal gain. The story was completely false. Unfortunately, truth rarely mattered once public opinion began forming. Within days, the consequences multiplied. Professional opportunities disappeared. Business partnerships ended. Potential investors withdrew support. Gallery projects were canceled. People who once praised her work suddenly wanted nothing to do with her. Avery felt helpless. No matter how many times she denied the accusations, nobody seemed interested in listening. The lies spread faster than the truth ever could. The emotional damage became even worse when friends started distancing themselves. Some stopped calling. Others stopped responding to messages entirely. People she had known for years quietly disappeared from her life. Fear influenced many of them. Others simply believed the stories. The loneliness became overwhelming. For Avery, the experience revealed a painful truth. Reputation often took years to build, and only days to destroy. Meanwhile, Roman faced his own battle. The attacks against Avery were only one part of a much larger strategy. His enemies had launched coordinated assaults against his business empire as well. Financial investigations appeared suddenly. Anonymous complaints targeted his companies. Political allies faced pressure. Business contracts were questioned. Media outlets published negative reports daily. The goal was obvious: destroy Roman's influence, isolate him, force mistakes, create weakness. Someone powerful was orchestrating everything. Someone intelligent, someone patient. Roman recognized the strategy immediately. This wasn't random. This was war. A war being fought through information rather than bullets. And Avery stood directly in the center of it. The situation placed enormous pressure on their relationship. Trust became increasingly difficult to maintain. Every day brought new accusations, new lies, new reasons to doubt. Even Avery struggled at times. Questions she had tried ignoring began resurfacing. Had Roman told her everything? Was there more he was hiding? How much of their connection was genuine? How much was connected to the ring? The uncertainty slowly poisoned her thoughts. She hated herself for doubting him, yet doubt continued growing anyway. One evening, she sat alone in her apartment, reading another article attacking her character. The words blurred together. The accusations felt endless. For the first time in months, she cried. Not because strangers hated her, not because opportunities were disappearing, but because she no longer knew who she could trust. The world around her felt unstable. Nothing made sense anymore. Roman arrived shortly afterward. The moment he saw her expression, he understood how much damage had been done. He wanted to fix everything, wanted to make the pain disappear. But some wounds could not be solved through power or influence. Some wounds required trust, and trust was exactly what their enemies were trying to destroy. The following week delivered the worst blow yet. A major news organization published a massive investigative report. The story dominated headlines. Television networks discussed it. Social media exploded. The report claimed Roman had manipulated Avery from the very beginning. According to the article, he purchased the engagement ring not to protect her, but to gain access to the hidden fortune. The story suggested Avery had merely been a pawn. A useful tool, someone Roman used to advance his own interests. The accusations devastated her, because unlike previous stories, this one contained details, real details, information that should have been private, information connected to events only a few people knew. For the first time, doubt felt unavoidable. Maybe Roman hadn't lied completely, but had he told the entire truth? She didn't know anymore. The uncertainty created distance between them. Conversations became shorter. Silences became longer. Neither knew how to bridge the growing gap. Roman sensed a change immediately. Yet every attempt to explain seemed to create more questions. Every answer generated additional suspicion. The situation continued deteriorating. Then everything changed overnight. A leaked document appeared online. At first, nobody paid much attention. Then experts began analyzing it. Journalists verified portions of its contents. News organizations rushed to cover the story. The document appeared authentic. And according to what it revealed, Roman DeLuca had known about the ring's secret long before Avery ever sold it. Long before their paths crossed. Long before any of the events he had described. If the document was genuine, it meant Roman had not been entirely honest. It suggested that many of the explanations he gave Avery were incomplete, possibly even deceptive. The revelation spread across every major platform within hours. Public opinion shifted instantly. The accusations suddenly seemed credible. The timing seemed impossible to ignore. Avery stared at the leaked document for nearly an hour. Her hands trembled. Her heart felt heavy. Because for the first time since meeting Roman, she genuinely did not know what to believe. And somewhere in the city, Roman stared at the same document with growing alarm, because he understood something Avery did not. The leak had been planned perfectly. Someone wanted her to see it. Someone wanted her trust shattered completely. And the most terrifying part was that portions of the document were real. Enough truth existed inside the lie to make it believable. Enough truth existed to destroy everything they had built. And for the first time since this dangerous journey began, Avery seriously considered the possibility that Roman DeLuca had been lying from the beginning. The leaked document changed everything. For days, Avery Collins felt trapped inside a storm she could not control. News articles continued spreading. Social media remained relentless. Everywhere she looked, people seemed convinced they knew the truth. The document painted Roman DeLuca as a manipulator and portrayed Avery as nothing more than a pawn in a much larger game. What hurt most was not the public humiliation. It was the uncertainty, the doubt, the feeling that she could no longer separate truth from deception. For weeks, she had depended on Roman's explanations, trusted his protection, believed his warnings. Now she questioned everything. Yet, amid the confusion, something unexpected happened. Instead of collapsing, Avery became angry. Not at Roman, not at the public, at herself. She realized she had spent months allowing other people to control the narrative of her life. Her ex-fiancé had done it. The media had done it. Roman had done it to some extent, even if his intentions were different. Everyone seemed to know what was best for Avery Collins, except Avery Collins herself. That realization became a turning point. For the first time since selling the engagement ring, she stopped reacting to events. She started taking control. The change began quietly. She stopped reading online comments. She stopped checking news coverage. She stopped searching for approval from people who had already judged her. Instead, she focused on facts, evidence, reality. The situation surrounding the ring was too important to leave in other people's hands. If someone had manipulated the leaked document, she intended to find out who. If Roman had lied, she intended to uncover the truth herself. No more assumptions. No more blind trust. No more fear. The investigation began from her apartment. Using old emails, financial records, archived articles, and documents connected to her former engagement, Avery started building her own timeline. At first, the information seemed disconnected. Random details, unimportant events, small inconsistencies. But as the days passed, patterns began appearing. Certain names surfaced repeatedly. Certain companies appeared in unexpected places. Financial transactions connected people who should never have been connected. The deeper she looked, the stranger everything became. One discovery especially caught her attention. Several online publications responsible for spreading attacks against her had received funding from the same hidden source. The transactions had been disguised through multiple shell corporations. Finding the connection required patience. But once she discovered it, the evidence became difficult to ignore. Someone had coordinated the campaign. Someone powerful. Someone wealthy. Someone with resources far beyond ordinary criminals. For the first time, Avery realized the attacks were never random. Every article, every rumor, every accusation, they were pieces of a carefully designed strategy. The realization strengthened her resolve. At the same time, Avery began focusing on herself. For months her life had revolved around survival, fear, questions, danger. She had forgotten who she was before everything started. Now she worked to rediscover that person. She returned to painting, returned to creating art, returned to the passion she had abandoned during the chaos. The process became therapeutic. Each canvas represented another step toward healing. Each completed piece reminded her that her identity existed beyond scandals and criminal conspiracies. Friends who truly cared about her slowly returned. Not everyone. Some relationships remained broken. Others proved impossible to repair. But the people who mattered most stayed. And that was enough. The emotional recovery wasn't immediate. Some days remained difficult. Some nights were still filled with doubt. Yet progress continued. Little by little, Avery became stronger, more confident, more independent. Meanwhile, Roman watched from a distance. The change in Avery was impossible to miss. He had expected heartbreak after the leaked document, expected confusion, expected pain. What he had not expected was growth. She no longer relied on him for answers, no longer called seeking reassurance, no longer looked to him for guidance. Instead, she was building her own path. Part of Roman admired her. Another part feared what it meant. For the first time since meeting Avery, he realized he might lose her permanently, not because of enemies, not because of danger, because she might decide she no longer needed him. That possibility disturbed him more than he wanted to admit. Roman had spent years controlling situations, controlling outcomes, protecting people through power and influence. But Avery's future belonged entirely to her, and no amount of power could change that. The realization forced him to confront uncomfortable truths about himself. For perhaps the first time in his life, Roman understood that protecting someone and possessing someone were not the same thing. The lesson was painful, necessary, and long overdue. As weeks passed, Avery's independent investigation produced even more discoveries. One evening, she uncovered evidence suggesting that portions of the leaked document had been altered, not completely fabricated. Altered. Someone had mixed genuine information with false information, a dangerous technique because it made lies appear credible. The discovery changed everything. If the document had been manipulated, then the public narrative collapsed. More importantly, it meant someone desperately wanted Avery and Roman divided. The question was why. What benefit came from destroying their trust? The answer led directly back to the ring. Every major event seemed connected. The engagement ring, the hidden fortune, the criminal organizations, the attacks, the media campaign, the leaked document. Everything pointed toward a single objective: control. Someone wanted control over whatever information remained hidden inside that diamond, and they were willing to destroy lives to obtain it. Avery shared some of her findings with trusted investigators. Independent experts reviewed the evidence. Several conclusions confirmed her suspicions. Digital signatures had been altered. Records had been modified. Information had been strategically leaked. The attacks against her were part of a coordinated operation. Slowly, public perception began changing. Journalists started asking different questions. New reports challenged previous assumptions. People who once believed the accusations became less certain. The shift wasn't dramatic, but it was real. Truth was finally beginning to surface. The pressure surrounding Avery started easing. Career opportunities slowly returned. Professional contacts reached out again. People became more cautious before accepting rumors as fact. The change felt satisfying, not because she needed validation, because she had earned it. She had fought for the truth herself. No one handed it to her. No one rescued her. She rescued herself. That realization became one of the most empowering moments of her life. Then came the breakthrough. Late one evening, while reviewing financial records connected to shell corporations, Avery discovered a name. A single name hidden beneath layers of fake companies and falsified documents. The person behind the attacks. The person funding the media campaign. The person connected to the manipulated evidence. The person connected to her former fiancé. The person connected to the ring. Avery stared at the screen in disbelief. The answer felt impossible. For months she had searched for enemies among criminal organizations and rival families. She never expected the truth to be so personal. Never expected it to connect directly to someone from her own past. The evidence was overwhelming. Every trail pointed to the same individual. Every financial connection led back to the same source. Every major event could now be explained. The attacks, the lies, the manipulation, the betrayal, everything. Avery leaned back in her chair, her heartbeat accelerating. Months of confusion suddenly made sense. Months of unanswered questions finally had an answer. But the discovery created a new problem. Because the person responsible for everything wasn't just dangerous. They were far more powerful than she had ever imagined. And now Avery knew exactly who they were. The woman who had spent months fighting for the truth finally uncovered the identity of the person who started everything. The discovery Avery Collins made changed the entire direction of the conflict. For months, she had believed powerful criminal organizations were operating independently. She assumed multiple enemies were competing for control of the fortune hidden inside the diamond. The truth was far more dangerous. One person had been pulling the strings from the beginning. One person had quietly manipulated events while remaining hidden behind layers of deception. The mastermind was Victor Hale. Years earlier, Victor had built a reputation as a respected businessman and political donor. Publicly, he appeared untouchable, successful, influential, trustworthy. Privately, he was something entirely different. Victor had spent decades building networks that connected organized crime, corrupt politicians, financial institutions, and private security groups. His influence reached places most people never imagined. The missing fortune connected directly to him. Years ago, several powerful crime families had secretly invested enormous amounts of money into offshore accounts controlled through hidden partnerships. The fortune had been designed to remain invisible, untraceable, protected. Then someone betrayed the arrangement. Assets disappeared. Accounts vanished. Millions became impossible to locate. The betrayal triggered years of conflict. Families collapsed. Leaders disappeared. All while Victor quietly searched for the missing information. The engagement ring had become part of that search. The encrypted storage hidden inside the diamond contained access keys connected to the fortune. Not the money itself, but the information necessary to find it. For years, Victor searched unsuccessfully. Then Avery unknowingly entered the picture. Everything that followed began because of that single connection. When Roman DeLuca learned the full truth, he immediately understood the scale of the threat. This was no longer about protecting Avery from a few criminals. This had become a war involving some of the most powerful figures in the city. And everyone wanted the same thing: control of the fortune. The city changed almost overnight. Business leaders suddenly faced investigations. Political scandals exploded across media networks. Companies connected to Victor became targets. Financial institutions froze accounts. Government agencies launched inquiries. What appeared to be ordinary corruption cases were actually pieces of a much larger battle happening behind closed doors. Money became a weapon. Influence became a weapon. Information became a weapon. The conflict spread rapidly. Former allies turned against each other. Long-standing partnerships collapsed. Powerful individuals switched sides whenever it benefited them. Nobody trusted anyone. Every agreement felt temporary. Every alliance felt fragile. The atmosphere became increasingly dangerous. Roman found himself balancing multiple threats simultaneously. His own organization faced pressure from rivals hoping to exploit the chaos. Political enemies saw opportunities to weaken him. Financial attacks targeted his businesses. Yet despite everything happening around him, His focus remained on Avery, because Victor Hale had not abandoned his objective. The attacks against Avery slowed but never disappeared completely. Surveillance continued. Unknown individuals followed her. Attempt to access her records increased. Victor understood something everyone else was beginning to realize. Avery had become the key to everything. Not because she possessed a fortune, because she possessed knowledge. Knowledge that could unlock it. Roman responded by increasing protection. Security teams monitored her movements. Investigators tracked suspicious activity. Every precaution was taken. Still, the pressure continued growing as the conflict escalated. Avery found herself pulled deeper into events she never wanted to be part of. Months earlier, she had been struggling to pay bills and rebuild her life after heartbreak. Now she sat in secure locations reviewing evidence connected to financial crimes worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The transformation felt surreal, yet she refused to step back. Too much had happened. Too many lives had been damaged. Too many people had suffered because of Victor's greed. If ending the conflict required her involvement, she intended to see it through. That determination impressed Roman more than ever. He watched her navigate pressure that would have broken most people. She remained focused, disciplined, strong. The woman he first noticed because of an engagement ring had become someone entirely different, someone extraordinary. At the same time, their relationship evolved. The trust destroyed by manipulation slowly returned. Not completely, not instantly, but enough. Enough for honest conversations. Enough for vulnerability. Enough for hope. For the first time in months, both allowed themselves to imagine a future beyond danger. A future where investigations ended. A future where enemies disappeared. A future where they could finally live normal lives. Unfortunately, Victor Hale had no intention of allowing that future to happen. New intelligence revealed his final plan. He had identified a location connected to the hidden fortune, an abandoned financial archive outside the city. Old records stored there contained information necessary to unlock the remaining encrypted data connected to the ring. Whoever controlled those records would likely control the fortune. The discovery changed everything. A race began. Multiple factions moved simultaneously. Criminal organizations, corrupt officials, private mercenaries. Everyone wanted access first. The situation threatened to explode into open warfare. Roman knew there was only one solution. The operation had to happen immediately. A carefully coordinated mission was assembled. Trusted investigators, security specialists, financial experts. Everyone understood the stakes. Success could end the conflict permanently. Failure could strengthen Victor beyond recovery. The planning lasted several days. Every detail was analyzed, every contingency considered, every risk evaluated. Still, uncertainty remained unavoidable. Victor had spent years preparing for this moment. He would not surrender easily. The night of the operation arrived beneath heavy rain. Dark clouds covered the city. Roads reflected distant lights. The atmosphere felt tense, unnatural, like the entire city was holding its breath. Avery remained inside a secure command location. Our teams moved into position. Roman personally led part of the operation, something Avery strongly opposed. The risk was too high. Too many variables existed. Yet Roman refused to stay behind. If this was a final confrontation, he intended to face it himself. Hours passed. Reports arrived continuously. Initial objectives succeeded. Several facilities were secured. Key documents recovered. Important evidence protected. For a brief moment, victory seemed possible. Then communication failures began. One team stopped responding. Another reported unexpected resistance. Movement inside the target area became increasingly chaotic. Victor's forces were prepared, much more prepared than expected. The situation deteriorated rapidly. Avery watched incoming updates with growing concern. Information became fragmented, conflicting, incomplete. Nobody seemed certain what was happening. Then came the final transmission. Roman's voice, brief, distorted, barely understandable, but unmistakably his. The message ended abruptly. Silence followed. Minutes passed. No additional communication arrived. Search teams moved immediately. Emergency protocols activated. Everyone hoped for positive news. Instead, investigators discovered evidence of an explosion near the operation site. Vehicles destroyed, structures damaged, debris scattered everywhere. The scene looked catastrophic. Search efforts continued through the night, hour after hour. No sign of Roman, no confirmation, no answers, only uncertainty. As dawn approached, the reality became increasingly difficult to ignore. Several members of the operation survived. Others were injured. Some remained missing. Roman DeLuca was among them. Avery stood silently inside the command center as reports arrived. Each update felt worse than the last. Nobody wanted to say the words aloud. Nobody wanted to accept the possibility. Yet the conclusion seemed unavoidable. The final mission had succeeded in exposing Victor Hale's network. Evidence had been secured. The conspiracy was collapsing, but the cost appeared devastating, because the man who risked everything to protect Avery Collins had vanished without a trace. And as search teams continued combing through the wreckage, Roman DeLuca was officially presumed dead. The days following Roman DeLuca's disappearance felt unreal. For Avery Collins, time seemed to move differently. Hours felt like days. Days felt like weeks. The operation had achieved its primary objective. Victor Hale's network was collapsing. Authorities were arresting corrupt officials. Financial records recovered during the mission exposed years of criminal activity. Businesses connected to illegal operations were being shut down. Across the city, headlines dominated every news cycle. People who had once appeared untouchable were suddenly facing investigations. The criminal empire built around the hidden fortune was crumbling, yet none of it mattered to Avery, because the one question she wanted answered remained unresolved. What happened to Roman? Search teams continued working around the clock. Investigators reviewed security footage. Witnesses were interviewed. Damaged communication records were analyzed. Still, no clear answer emerged. Some believed Roman died during the explosion. Others believed he had escaped. Without evidence, nobody could say for certain. The uncertainty became its own kind of torture. For weeks, Avery refused to give up hope. Every morning she checked for updates. Every evening she waited for news. Every phone call made her heart race. But nothing changed. The silence remained. The absence remained. And slowly, reality began forcing itself into her life. For the first time, Avery truly understood how much Roman had become part of her world. The realization surprised her. Months earlier, she had viewed him as a dangerous stranger, a mysterious Mafia don connected to a ring she desperately needed to sell. Then he became her protector, her ally, her source of frustration, her source of comfort. Somewhere along the way, he became something more. Now his absence left a space she couldn't ignore. Despite the grief, life continued moving forward. Victor Hale's arrest triggered a chain reaction. Evidence collected during the investigation led to dozens of additional arrests. Financial experts recovered significant portions of the missing fortune. Government officials publicly acknowledged years of corruption. Media organizations that had spread false accusations against Avery were forced to issue corrections. The truth finally emerged, piece by piece, story by story, document by document. Public opinion shifted dramatically. People who once judged Avery began seeing her differently. She was no longer viewed as a scandal, no longer viewed as a victim. Instead, many saw her as someone who survived extraordinary circumstances and helped expose a massive criminal conspiracy. The redemption felt strange. Months earlier, she would have celebrated. Now it felt secondary, because success meant very little without someone to share it with. One afternoon, nearly 2 months after Roman disappeared, Avery received an unexpected package. No return address, no explanation, just a small black box delivered to her apartment. Her pulse quickened immediately. Carefully, she opened it. Inside was the engagement ring, the same ring she had sold at the pawn shop, the same ring that started everything. For several moments, she simply stared at it. The diamond reflected sunlight from a nearby window. It looked exactly as she remembered, yet now it felt completely different. Not because of its monetary value, because of everything connected to it. The ring represented loss, fear, danger, secrets, growth, survival, and strangely enough, hope. Beneath the ring sat a folded note. Avery unfolded the paper carefully. 3 words were written across the page. Look closer. R. Her heart stopped. Roman. The handwriting belonged to him. Without question, without doubt, for the first time in months, hope exploded inside her chest. Roman was alive. He had to be. No one else could have sent the note. Her hands trembled as she examined the ring more carefully. Eventually, she discovered something she had never noticed before. Inside the band was a tiny engraved coordinate, not part of the original design. A hidden marking, a clue, a location. Within hours, Avery traveled there. The coordinates led outside the city to a quiet coastal property overlooking the ocean. The place seemed isolated, peaceful, almost forgotten. As she approached the small house, sitting near the shoreline, emotions overwhelmed her. Excitement, fear, disbelief, hope. Every possibility raced through her mind. Then the front door opened. Roman stepped outside. For a moment, neither moved. Neither spoke. Months of pain, months of uncertainty, months of unanswered questions. Everything disappeared. Roman looked different, thinner, more tired. A faint scar across one side of his face. But he was alive. That was all Avery needed to know. The emotional weight of the moment hit both of them simultaneously. Roman had survived the explosion. Severe injuries had forced him into hiding, while investigators finished dismantling Victor Hale's remaining network. The end. Very few people knew he was alive. The secrecy protected ongoing operations and prevented remaining enemies from targeting him. He wanted to contact Avery sooner. Circumstances made it impossible. Now, standing together again, words suddenly felt inadequate. Some reunions required explanations. Others required honesty. This was both. Over the following hours, Roman told her everything. The complete story. The parts he had never shared before. The truth about the ring. The hidden fortune. The investigation. The risks. The sacrifices. Most importantly, he explained why he bought the ring in the first place. At first, the ring mattered because of what it contained. The encrypted information, the connection to the missing fortune, the danger surrounding it. But that reason disappeared quickly. Long before Avery realized she was being watched. Long before enemies started moving against her. Long before their lives became connected. Roman's priorities changed. The ring stopped being important. Avery became important. That truth remained difficult for him to admit. Roman spent most of his life making decisions based on strategy, logic, power, control. Avery changed that. Protecting her became personal, far more personal than he intended. When danger increased, he chose her safety over his own interests. Again and again, not because it benefited him, because he cared. Deeply, the realization softened something inside Avery. For months she had searched for hidden motives, hidden agendas, hidden lies. Now she finally understood. The simplest truth had been there all along. Roman cared about her, not because of the fortune, not because of the investigation, not because of the ring, because she was Avery, the woman who refused a break, the woman who challenged him, the woman who changed him. Together, they spent days at the coastal property, away from reporters, away from investigations, away from danger. For the first time, they had space to breathe, space to heal, space to process everything they survived. Old wounds didn't disappear overnight. Trust still required time. Pain still existed. But healing finally felt possible. Months later, the city looked different. The criminal conflict had ended. Corrupt networks were dismantled. Victor Hale received multiple life sentences. The hidden fortune was recovered and placed under legal supervision. Many victims received compensation. Justice, while imperfect, finally arrived. Avery's career flourished again. Her art gained recognition. Her story inspired people. Not because she was perfect, because she endured. Roman also changed. For the first time in years, he began stepping away from the world that had defined most of his life. The future no longer revolved around power. It revolved around purpose. And that purpose increasingly included Avery. One evening, nearly a year after she first walked into the pawn shop, they returned together. The building looked exactly the same. The counters, the displays, the fluorescent lights, everything unchanged. Yet everything was different. Avery smiled as she looked around. It was almost impossible to believe that one desperate decision had led to everything that followed. Roman stood beside her quietly. Neither needed to say much. The memory spoke for itself. Avery had entered that shop believing she was losing the last valuable piece of her past. Instead, she unknowingly stepped into the beginning of her future. The engagement ring rested safely on her finger once again, not as a symbol of heartbreak, not as a symbol of loss, as a reminder that life's most painful moments sometimes lead to unexpected destinations. A reminder that endings are not always endings. Sometimes they are redirections. As they walked out together into the evening sunlight, Avery finally understood something that had taken an entire year to learn. Selling the engagement ring was never the end of her story. It was the moment fate quietly redirected her life. And the Mafia Don never bought the ring because of its value. He bought it because protecting Avery Collins eventually became more important than protecting himself.